The gym was alive with noise, a modern cathedral of steel and sweat. Music pounded from the overhead speakers, something electronic with a bass line that rattled the mirrors along the wall. Racks clanged as plates hit the floor. Phones lit up in almost every hand, their tiny screens capturing curls, squats, flexed torsos in the harsh fluorescent light. In this place, nothing existed unless it was filmed. The owner thrived in this atmosphere. He was young, fit, all edges and bravado, the kind of man who turned his own reflection into an audience. He paced between benches and treadmills like he owned more than the gym, like he owned the people in it too. His voice rose above the music, cutting sharp and deliberate, calibrated for laughter. And then he said it. Chuck Norris. He can't even lift a barbell anymore. The words weren't whispered in a corner. He projected them across the floor, right in front of his clients, right into the phones that were already recording. A ripple of laughter broke across the room. Some chuckled nervously, some barked out sharp amusement, eager to be part of the moment. A young man by the squat rack repeated it louder, "Yeah, he's old now." His friends howled, slapping each other's backs. The owner grinned, soaking in the reaction. He loved the show, the spotlight, the way he could turn a sentence into content. The smirk stayed on his face as he scanned the room, checking who else was laughing, who was filming. He knew how quickly this would spread online, how fast a joke could become a headline. But the laughter wasn't unanimous. Near the far wall, standing half in shadow between two cable machines, was a man who didn't move. He was older now, sure. His hair lighter than it once was, his frame not as full. But the posture, the way he carried himself, still made space bend around him. Chuck Norris had heard every word. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He didn't answer. He just stood, still as a column, his eyes fixed in the direction of the voice that had thrown the words like stones. The silence in him contrasted so violently with the noise around him that people started to notice. The laughter lost some of its certainty. A pair of young lifters elbowed each other and pointed. One whispered, "Is that?" The other nodded, wide-eyed. Phones shifted, lenses focusing, the digital crowd swelling to join the physical one. The owner, sensing he had the room, pushed harder. "What's wrong?" "Cat got his tongue," he called, his tone mocking. "Or maybe he knows I'm right." He gestured toward the dumbbells. "Legends fade, my friends. Movies aren't muscles. We're in a new era now." More laughter, but thinner this time. It was the laughter of people who didn't want to be caught on the wrong side of history, the laughter of a crowd unsure whether it was still safe to laugh. Chuck stayed motionless. Only his hands betrayed him, slipping quietly into his pockets as if to hold back the tension building in them. His jaw clenched once, then stilled. He kept his gaze steady. The quiet stretched long enough that even the music seemed to fade behind it. Then the crowd began to press him. "Come on, Chuck, show him." Someone shouted. Another voice echoed, "Yeah, prove you've still got it." Phones rose higher, faces turning, every eye drawn to the still figure by the wall. The owner grinned wider, feeding on it. He strode toward the weight platform, dragging a loaded barbell across the rubber floor. The steel scraped, plates rattling, the sound slicing through the gym. He set it down hard, right in the open, where everyone could see. "Here's your chance," he said loudly, every syllable polished for the cameras. "Show us. Lift it. Prove me wrong. Or admit you're just a shadow of what you used to be." The gym froze. Machines were abandoned mid-set. Music still played, but no one heard it. All attention locked on one man. Chuck hadn't moved yet. He stood in that silence, the stillness somehow louder than the taunts. The owner folded his arms, smug and waiting. The crowd pressed closer, ringed with glowing screens, recording every second. And then, slowly, Chuck's eyes left the barbell and swept the room. He didn't speak. He didn't move toward it. He just let the silence grow, thick and suffocating, until even those who had laughed felt the weight of it pressing down. Every phone was aimed at him now. Every breath in the room waited on his choice. The tension had become unbearable. And still, he said nothing. "Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel." The owner didn't let the moment dissolve. He grabbed the wireless mic off its dock, meant for fitness classes, and his voice poured into the speakers above the treadmills. A faint hiss of feedback sharpened into words. "We live in a new era," he announced, pacing the length of the gym like it was his stage. "The old legends. They stay in the movies. In a place like this, they don't matter anymore." Laughter swelled again, but it wasn't unanimous. Some chuckled too hard, hiding unease. Others just lifted their phones higher. The entire room had shifted, no longer a gym, but a theater with steel plates and squat racks as props. Chuck stayed rooted in the back, hands still in his pockets. He looked almost too still for the chaos around him. The young owner fed off the noise, while Norris fed the silence. That silence wasn't passive, it was pressure. People began to feel it, even if they didn't admit it. A group of young athletes stepped forward, emboldened by the show. One clapped his hands, calling out, "Come on, man, show us something." Another smirked, "If you've got it, prove it." They weren't cruel exactly, but they were hungry, for footage, for spectacle, for a piece of history they could post before anyone else. The crowd became the third force. Every shift of weight, every whispered line ricocheted through the room. "Is that really him?" someone asked. "He looks smaller in person." Others murmured, "What if he can't?" The whisper of doubt spread like smoke. The owner sensed he had them. He strutted toward the platforms, his sneakers squeaking against the rubber mats. He kicked a loaded barbell into place, letting it scrape and rattle until every eye followed the sound. He didn't load it to be impossible, just heavy enough to humiliate if the attempt failed. With a smirk, he turned back to Chuck. "This is simple," he said into the mic, pointing at the steel like a judge delivering terms. "You lift it, I shut my mouth. I'll admit I was wrong right here, in front of everyone. But if you don't," he let the pause breathe. "Then you admit it's over. You're just a shadow now." The room stiffened. Machines sat idle, screens frozen mid-scroll, bodies leaning in without realizing it. The bass-heavy music thudded low in the background, like a clock ticking. Even the fans who had laughed began to sense the cruelty in the performance. Phones hovered higher, dozens of glowing rectangles aimed at Chuck. The comments on one live stream moved so fast they blurred, "Do it, washed up, legend, prove it." The internet was already watching, even before anything happened. Chuck raised his head slowly, scanning the faces. He didn't look at the bar first, he looked at them, the crowd, every smirk and every flicker of doubt. His eyes passed over the owner last. The difference between them was stark, one filled the room with noise, the other with silence. And then the voices started again. "No speeches," someone shouted. "Lift or pass." Another voice, sharper, "Yeah, prove it, old man." The words cut across the gym, bouncing from mirror to mirror. For a second, the energy tilted toward mockery. The owner grinned, feeding on it. He crouched theatrically beside the bar, showing a picture-perfect setup, back flat, grip wide, chest out. He didn't pull, it wasn't his show, but the demonstration was meant to mock. Rising again, he presented the bar like an offering. Chuck still hadn't moved. His hands pressed deeper into his pockets, and the pause stretched so long it became uncomfortable. People shifted their weight, uncertain whether to laugh or hold their breath. The silence felt dangerous. The owner pushed one last time. "Your turn," he said, voice booming through the speakers. "Prove me wrong. Or admit it's finished." Every phone caught the moment. Every set of eyes locked to the platform. Finally, Chuck slid his hands free. The motion was slow, deliberate, the kind that made the crowd lean forward without thinking. He stepped toward the bar, each step measured, echoing louder in the hush than the pounding music ever had. The owner smirked, convinced he had him cornered. The crowd pressed closer, the ring tightening. No one lifted weights anymore. No one moved. Chuck stopped just short of the bar. His gaze flicked from the steel to the man with the mic. He didn't touch it yet. He just stood over it, still as stone. The silence grew unbearable. The phone zoomed in. And the room held its breath, waiting to see what he would do. The phones drifted closer first, like moths finding a porch light. Lenses pushed between shoulders, screens tilting to catch his face, the plates, the owner's grin. The music kept pounding, but it sounded far away now, as if the room had been wrapped in felt. No one was training anymore. Bars rested in racks, treadmills rolled empty belts, a cable stack hung mid-rep where someone had simply let go. The gym, built to be loud, hunted for the next sound and found none. Chuck didn't rush to supply it. He stood over the bar without touching it, the rubber platform faintly stickier beneath his shoes, the bright tape lines crossing like fault marks. A draft from the open bay door wandered in, bringing the smell of asphalt and warm dust. He let his eyes sweep the semicircle of faces, excitement disguised as cruelty, cruelty disguised as curiosity, a few quiet pockets of discomfort trying not to be seen. The owner waited just outside that circle, Mike relaxed at his side, rehearsed casualness hiding the way his jaw had set. Clock's ticking, man, someone said, aiming for a laugh that didn't quite arrive. Another voice, nervy and eager, let him talk. Then lift. That compromise satisfied no one. The crowd wanted a clean arc, provocation, reply, verdict. Anything else would feel like theft. Chuck took a breath, slow enough to be visible. He nodded once, not to the owner but to the room, as if accepting the terms of a game he hadn't asked to play. When he spoke, his voice didn't ride the speakers, it forced people to lean in. Weight doesn't lie, he said. People do. Especially when they're afraid of getting old. It wasn't a punchline. It wasn't defensive. It was the kind of sentence that gets heavier after it lands. The nearest phones wobbled, their owners adjusted grips. Behind them, a trainer set her clipboard down and folded her arms as if the air had gotten colder. The owner raised the mic in an easy half-shrug. That's poetry, he said, smiling toward the cameras. We're here for physics. He gestured to the knurled steel like a game show prize. Let's see it. A small cheer tried to form and died, embarrassed by how shrill it sounded. Silence claimed the floor again, the kind that magnifies small details, a single plate vibrating against its neighbor, the click of a phone case, somebody's gum popping and then stopping dead. Chuck looked back at the bar. His hands stayed at his sides. Strength isn't how much you can throw over your head, he said, evenly. It's keeping yourself when someone tries to strip you down. The words cut cleaner than the room expected. It wasn't moralizing, it felt like inventory. Heads tipped. A woman near the dumbbells blinked hard, as if surprised by the heat behind her eyes. Somewhere in the background the HVAC unit kicked on, a soft rush over steel and skin. From the front row, good words, man, but lift. The owner heard his rescue line and stepped into it. Exactly, he said, turning to the crowd. He gets it. We all get it. Show us you still can. He set his foot against the sleeve and rolled the bar so the knurling centered perfectly between Chuck's shoes. It rattled, a bright mechanical chatter that ran up the mirrors and back. He took 2 exaggerated steps away, palms out, as if he'd created a neutral space where nothing was neutral. The crowd's voice divided cleanly now, show me hunger on one side, a quieter, steadier attentiveness on the other. The second group didn't shout, it watched. Watching can be louder than noise. Chuck slid his jacket off. It was not a flourish, it was housekeeping. The room reacted like it was a curtain drop. The fabric caught his shoulders and then left them, revealing forearms marked more by time than vanity, tendons like old cables, a thin white scar over one wrist that a few people recognized and couldn't place. He folded the jacket once and set it on the platform edge, squared, deliberate. The owner's smile widened into satisfaction. It was finally becoming the clip he'd wanted. He took a neat step to the side to keep both men framed for the screens. He didn't notice how many phones had drifted away from him to center more fully on the man he'd tried to shrink. Chuck rubbed his palms together, not chalking, just waking the joints. He wiggled one finger as if it had gone to sleep. Then he bent, not down, not yet, just enough to mark the hinge, and lifted his chin to look at the crowd one more time. "This is a gym," he said, "not a courtroom. You don't need a verdict. You need an example." It didn't feel like a speech. It felt like a boundary. "Then set one," the owner said, voice still smooth, but the mic betrayed a dry edge he hadn't planned. Chuck stepped to the line. His heels found their place without him staring at them. Feet under hips. Toes slightly out. Small things, learned when nobody was watching. He closed his eyes for a breath and let it go. The noise in the room condensed. The bass seemed to fall away, leaving only the thin top of the track and a far-off hi-hat counting time. Weekday traffic hummed outside, blurring into a steady underline. Inside, bodies eased forward a fraction, making a ring more honest than any the owner had drawn with words. He hinged at the hips, hands dropping to hover over the bar, not touching, reading the knurling with the pads of his fingers through a whisper of air. Shoulders down. Lats engaged. The unglamorous work of getting ready. A boy near the front, filming at chest height, realized he had been holding his breath and exhaled too loudly. He smiled, embarrassed, and kept filming. "Come on, Chuck," someone whispered, almost prayerful. It wasn't a dare anymore. The owner stayed quiet for once. He didn't know why. Maybe the room had taken something back. Chuck's fingers opened and closed once, measuring their own steadiness. He set his grip, no hunting around, no fidgeting, thumbs locked, knuckles whitening just enough. His back flattened, the slow roll of alignment visible like a blueprint being pulled taut. He looked neither heroic nor broken. He looked like a man doing a thing he'd done 1,000 times, one more time. The bar waited, dumb and incorruptible. He took in air and packed it, the belly expanding against the belt he didn't wear. His eyes fixed on a nothing point just past the far mirror, a place to pull toward instead of up. A bead of sweat slid from his hairline, traced his cheek, hung from his jaw, and fell to the platform with a soft that the phones didn't catch. "Now," someone whispered, and nobody knows who it was. Chuck wrapped his hands around the steel. The knurling kissed the skin. The room stopped being a room and became a held breath. The phones hovered so close they looked like lanterns in the dark. Every screen locked on the same point, Chuck Norris, standing over the loaded barbell. The gym, once deafening with music and clanging plates, now felt like a theater at intermission, restless, waiting, airtight with heat. The bass still pulsed from the ceiling speakers, but it sounded far away, like a heartbeat buried under tension. "Come on, old man," the owner barked, making sure every microphone caught him. His grin was wide, but his eyes flickered. "Show us what you've got left." Chuck lowered his hands. His grip closed on the steel, fingers digging into the knurling like he'd done 1,000 times before. No theatrics, no bounce, just the deliberate patience of a craftsman. He braced his spine, filled his lungs, and pulled. The bar resisted. Plates rang against the sleeves, clinging to the ground as if they belonged there. For a heartbeat it looked as if nothing would move. Then the steel peeled free, slow, grudging, like earth giving up a root. The crowd's noise collapsed. No laughter now, no shouts, only silence sharpened by a dozen shallow breaths. A woman near the front muttered, "Jesus," without realizing. Someone else whispered, "He's doing it," and their phone shook in their hand. Chuck rose steady, shoulders drawn back, face composed. It wasn't easy, the tremor in his arms gave that away, but it was honest. Every inch carried the weight of years, not just the bar. The owner tried a chuckle, forcing it. "Not bad," he said, too loudly. "But that's just warm-up weight." His smile worked hard, waiting for permission from the crowd that didn't come. At the top, Chuck didn't pose. He didn't roar or throw the bar down. He simply stood, breathing in through his nose, exhaling slow, as if measuring time itself. Then, with the same care, he lowered the bar back to the platform. No slam, no drama. Just control. He stepped away, leaving the steel to settle. His voice was calm, unamplified, but it reached the far corners. "You wanted a show," he said. "I never trained for shows." The words hit differently than the lift itself. Half the room erupted into applause, clapping with the shock of having witnessed something real. The other half booed, hungry for failure, for spectacle, for blood. The split was violent, cheers and jeers colliding in the rafters. The owner's grin faltered for the first time. He forced it back, lifting the mic. "Cute philosophy," he said, but the line was thinner now. "That wasn't heavy. In real form, you'd never last against younger guys." The crowd turned on him quickly. "Give him a real challenge," someone yelled. "Add weight." Another shouted, "Put it up or shut up." The noise snowballed. The room no longer belonged to him, it belonged to the mob. Phones swung toward the platform as the owner, trapped by his own showmanship, kicked another plate into place. The clang rang out sharp, rattling across the floor. He stacked a second plate on the other side, chest puffed, pretending it was nothing. The bar looked heavier now, thicker, darker. "There," he said, gesturing grandly. "This is where words end." The crowd roared its approval. Even those who had doubted Chuck earlier leaned forward, craving resolution. But Chuck didn't move. He looked at the bar once, then lifted his eyes back to the man with the microphone. "The real challenge isn't iron," Chuck said, each word deliberate. "It's looking another man in the eye and not looking away." The gym froze. The sentence sliced through the tension cleaner than any lift. A hush spread like a wave, nervous laughter dying in throats, applause stalling mid-clap. Even those still filming lowered their phones an inch, surprised by how heavy the silence felt. The owner let out a laugh, but it cracked in the middle. "Nice fortune cookie," he sneered, trying to reset the tone. But the crowd wasn't with him anymore. Too many eyes had shifted, away from him, toward the man he was trying to belittle. He couldn't let it end there. Not with silence hanging like a verdict. So he stepped onto the platform himself. Phones snapped upward to catch it, lenses wide, breath quick. The owner squared his feet, chalked his palms, and crouched dramatically over the heavier bar. His grin returned, but this time it strained at the edges. "Here's your example," he said, locking eyes with the steel as if it were an enemy. He yanked at the bar, jerking it off balance. The plates rattled angrily. He reset, braced again, and pulled, harder, faster, desperate to prove. The weight moved, grudging, but his body betrayed him. His arms shook, quads trembled, and sweat carved a line down his cheek. The crowd surged closer, half cheering, half holding its breath. Chuck didn't flinch. He watched from the edge of the platform, silent, steady, as the owner's bravado turned into visible struggle. The bar wavered at his knees. His fingers whitened, his back quivered. He gritted his teeth, but his smile had vanished. And in that moment, the crowd realized, he might not have control at all. The bar shook at the owner's knees, quivering between rising and falling. His jaw clenched, teeth bared in something that wasn't a smile anymore. Sweat ran into his collar, darkening the fabric, the sound of his strained breath cutting through the thump of the music. The crowd pressed tighter, phones angling for the moment, failure or triumph, it didn't matter which, as long as it was sharp enough to go viral. Shouts rose from every side. "Up! Come on! You got it! Don't quit now!" But underneath the cheers was another current, one that didn't belong to him. It belonged to the man standing just off the platform, still and composed. Some voices had already turned. "Let Chuck try it," someone yelled. "Give him the real test." The owner jerked his head at the noise, almost losing his grip. His eyes darted toward the sound, then back to the bar, terrified to let it go. His body wavered, and in that instant the crowd understood that bravado had turned into survival. Chuck didn't move. His expression hadn't changed. He looked neither impressed nor cruel, only present. He let the silence around him speak, and the silence did what words couldn't, it divided the room. The owner tried again, pulling with a guttural grunt that bordered on desperation. The bar rose another inch, maybe two, then stalled. His face went red, veins carving lines at his temples. He was performing, but the performance had slipped. This was real, and the crowd knew it. "Careful," someone shouted from the back. The warning felt out of place in a room built on mockery, but it echoed louder than the laughs. A woman near the mirrors lowered her phone, uncomfortable now, as if filming had become complicity. Chuck stepped a fraction closer, his eyes steady on the man locked in struggle. But he still didn't interfere. The message was clear: strength was not about stepping in too early. The owner tried to recover his voice, straining words between breaths. "See, easy, for me." The lie rang hollow. His arms trembled, the weight dragging him down in front of everyone. And then Chuck spoke, not to mock, not to preach, just plain and calm. "You've already lost, and it isn't the bar that beat you." The words sliced the air. Gasps ran across the crowd. Phones caught every syllable, the microphones replaying his voice with a strange gravity that no amplifier could fake. The owner froze for half a heartbeat, enough for the bar to dip. He roared, jerking it back up, face twisted, but the noise from the room wasn't applause anymore. It was split. Some screamed for him to finish, others yelled for Chuck, others simply stood caught between admiration and discomfort. The room had turned into a trial, but the jury no longer agreed what victory looked like. The owner staggered, managing to lower the bar hard against the platform with a crash that rang through the building. He straightened, chest heaving, sweat pouring down, his grin now a grimace. He raised his arms as if to claim triumph, but the applause was thin. Too many had seen the truth in his struggle. He turned quickly, desperate to reclaim authority. "Fine," he spat, his voice hoarse but still loud through the speakers. "You lifted something. I lifted more. But don't fool yourselves, this man can't last against the young. He can't do what we can do. He's finished." The crowd didn't answer with agreement. It answered with demands. "Let Chuck try it. Give him the heavy bar. Prove it." The owner blinked, realizing the script had slipped from his hands. The audience had turned from spectators into authors, shouting for the scene they wanted. He looked around, lips tight, but every direction held phones and expectant eyes. Chuck raised his chin slightly, as if considering. He didn't touch the bar. Instead, he looked at the crowd and then back at the man who had mocked him. His voice was quiet, but it rang clear enough to hush the noise. "The real challenge," he said, "isn't iron. The real challenge is looking someone in the eye and not looking away." The words landed heavier than the plates. The crowd stilled for a moment, caught in the sharpness of it. It wasn't philosophy for applause, it was a blade turned toward the man who had turned this gym into an arena. The owner's laugh was brittle. "Big words," he said, though his voice cracked. He gestured at the loaded bar with false bravado. "Iron doesn't lie. Words do. Watch this." And with that, he crouched again. His hands gripped the steel, already raw from the first attempt. His body jerked forward, reckless with the need to reclaim control. The crowd, half cheering, half jeering, leaned in closer. But this time, it was different. His shoulders buckled, his breath ragged, and the bar clung to the ground as if welded there. His arms shook, his back trembled, but he kept pulling. And from just off the platform, Chuck watched without moving, calm, steady, waiting. The crowd didn't know if they wanted him to succeed or fail. They only knew they couldn't look away. The second attempt was doomed before it started. The owner set his stance, chalked palms against the knurling, tried to summon the image of control. But urgency had replaced form. He jerked the bar like it owed him something. The plates shuddered, scraping his shins, vibrating up the collars. The weight barely left the ground before stalling halfway. The crowd felt it immediately. Phones tilted closer, breaths hitched, music shrank into background noise. His face reddened, veins standing out along his temples, jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. He was no longer performing. He was fighting not to collapse. Up. Push it, someone shouted. Another voice, lower, uneasy, drop it before you hurt yourself. The words clashed above the thudding bass. The bar trembled in his hands, wrists straining, knees buckling inward. His breath came in ragged bursts, shallow and panicked. A sound escaped him, a grunt that betrayed fear more than power. Chuck stepped forward a single pace. Not aggressive, not dramatic. Just close enough to be there. His eyes locked on the wobbling bar, watching every misaligned inch. He raised one hand slightly, as if preparing to catch time itself. The owner gave one last jerk, forcing everything into a desperate heave. For a split second the bar rose. Then gravity claimed it. His shoulders caved, grip loosening. The plates tipped toward disaster. Chuck moved. No hesitation, no flourish. His palms caught the steel just outside the owner's hands, steadying its fall. Together, they guided it back down, plates kissing the platform with a heavy thud instead of a crash. Silence broke for a second, then the room detonated. Cheers, gasps, nervous laughter, even a few boos that dissolved under shame. Notifications pinged from dozens of live streams. Clips were already being titled, already escaping the walls of the gym. He saved him. He didn't let it fall. Chuck Norris, even now. The owner bent over the bar, chest heaving, knuckles white. He tried to reclaim composure, but his face betrayed everything: exhaustion, humiliation, something like relief. He straightened slowly, gripping the steel with one hand as if to prove he hadn't lost it entirely. But the crowd had seen. Pride had turned into dependence, and everyone knew it. Chuck stepped back, calm, giving him space. He didn't gloat, didn't preach. He let silence work. The owner finally turned toward him. In his eyes flickered rage, shame, and something heavier, reluctant respect. He opened his mouth, closed it again, searching for words he didn't have. Chuck's voice came quietly, without edge. Strength isn't crushing people. It's stopping them from being crushed. The line landed heavier than the bar itself. For the first time all day, the crowd didn't roar. It exhaled, slow, collective, like a body realizing what it had just seen. Applause followed, but softer, weightier, not entertainment but acknowledgement. The owner stared at him, lips pressed thin. Finally, barely audible, he muttered, "Thank you." It wasn't for the crowd. It was only for the man who had kept him standing. Chuck nodded once. He reached for his jacket, brushed off the chalk, and draped it over his arm. Phones followed him as he walked toward the bay door, sunlight spilling in, carrying the smell of asphalt and warm air. Someone near the desk shouted, "This is going viral." Dozens of heads bent toward screens, comments flooding in, "Respect." "Legend." He showed what real power is. Chuck paused at the threshold. Not to pose, not to feed the cameras. Just to look back once at the room that had turned spectacle into a lesson. His words came low, steady, but every mic caught them. "True strength," he said, "is helping the one who tried to tear you down." The crowd froze in the weight of it. Even those who had laughed earlier lowered their phones, struck by how unshakable the moment felt. The owner still stood at the platform, hand resting on the bar as if it might anchor him. For the first time, he didn't look like the center of the room. He looked like a man learning what strength actually meant. Chuck stepped into the sunlight and was gone. Inside, the gym buzzed again, machines starting up, conversations resuming, but the air wasn't the same. The crowd knew they had witnessed more than a stunt. And beyond the walls, the story was already leaving their hands, carried by 1,000 screens, replayed, reinterpreted. Not a win. Not a loss. Something harder to name. And that was why his name never faded.